Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming on a Friday afternoon in August. This is very, very, very nice, very pleasant. I'm very happy to be here in this beautiful and beloved city and to see friends and colleagues, to be with Olga Lempert. And I want to recognize Faina Kuklianskaya, the chairman of the Jewish community. And we have a special guest here today, Hadass Calderon from Israel, who is the granddaughter of Avromo Suckeverio, one of the heroes of the Jews of Vilna. I'm going to speak in English. I can, unfortunately, even after all these years, I don't know Lithuanian. But I can accept afterwards, if there are questions, in Russian, Hebrew, Yiddish, or Italian, or in English. I'm going to lead you into a little-known topic that I'm working on, which is the Jewish Museum, not the one that exists now, but its predecessor, its antecedents, the Jewish Museum in Vilnius from 1944 to 1949. Let me simply say that I find this period, this short period, 5 years, or maybe a little more, 8 years, very interesting. Of course, the Jews of Vilna, I will call it Vilna, forgive me, are a remnant of what they used to be. But the survivors try to rebuild what they can of Jewish life. And this is very hard because they live in Soviet Lithuania. And the numbers, well, I don't know if they're small or big. There were, after things settle, in the second half of 1946, there were 15,000 Jews in the city of Vilnius. And they were 7–8% of the population of the city. The city was not as big as it is now. That's not insignificant, 7–8% of the population of the city. These Jews had only 3 institutions, Jewish institutions in the city after World War II, after it is now under Soviet rule. One is the synagogue, the religious congregation. You can see only surviving rabbi of the Vilna rabbinate, Rabbi Gustman, who was the first rabbi right after the war. I will simply briefly say most Jews, even before the war in Vilna, were secular and did not go often to synagogue. The second institution after the war is what's called the Children's Combine, the Children's Kombinat. It was a combination of a Dietdom, a orphanage, a kindergarten, and an elementary school. This was quite large. Most of the children were orphans, which meant they had no parents, meaning there was not much of a community around the school because there isn't the parents bringing their kids to school and things like that. The third and the only other institution was the Jewish Museum. And because it was the only, if you want, secular, cultural, and social institution of Jews in Vilnius after the war, it plays a much bigger role than what we think of as a museum. First of all, it was not only a museum, it was an archive and a library. It had a great Jewish library. And of course, we are here in the National Library. Much of the Judaica collection here comes from that museum. It was an archive and a library. It was a cultural center with programs. It was a social center. People simply came. And most important, it was also a museum. And I will talk about that in a minute. I will mention a few things. It was the only Jewish museum in the entire Soviet Union after World War II. Nowhere else, not in Kiev, not in Moscow, was there a Jewish museum. And many things about it are unique and special. If I have a broad thesis of my talk, it is, very surprisingly, that even after World War II, Vilnius, the Jews Vilnius played a bigger role in Jewish culture than its numbers. In other words, not a big community, but it does things culturally that other places did not try to do and could not do. Now, I'm not going to talk about the first year of the history of this museum because I wrote about it in a book and I've spoken about it many times, but I assume most of you know the museum was founded by three figures: the poet Avromo Suckeverio, who's in the center of this photograph, and next to him, the leader of the partisans of the Vilna ghetto, Abba Kovner, and the poet Šmerkės Kačerginskio. The first year, to make it very brief, is about two things: creating the collection of this museum, the books, the papers, and the artifacts, and that means retrieving the cultural treasures that were buried underground and hidden in various places, creating the collection, and second of all, establishing the institution, that is, getting approval from the government, getting a budget, repairing the building, things like that. But by a year later, by the middle of 1945, the second half of 1945, the founders of this museum had all left Vilnius. Well, actually, by the fall of 1945. Kovner left and went to Eretz Yisrael. Kaczerginski left for Poland. Suckeverio was still in Moscow. He will visit Vilnius briefly, but he's not living here, and he will eventually also leave for Poland. So we have, the leadership has left. They've done their work of collecting in potato sacks, documents and things of that kind. And what I want to talk with you about is the second generation of leadership of this Jewish museum, and what happened to the Jewish museum after Suckeverio, Kaczerginski, and Abba Kovner left. Surprisingly, the museum in some ways was more successful and more active later than it was earlier. This is not because the leaders were better. Actually, it's because of a political reason, which is the main opponent of the museum, I mentioned later, was the Moscow official Mikhail Suslov. Suslov was here in Vilnius from 44 to 46. He was very repressive in many ways. Of course, he really led the war against Lithuanian partisans here. He did many bad things, but one of the things Suslov did was he was very strongly opposed to Jewish culture here. And between 44 and 46, it's very hard for these institutions. All these institutions have a better life after Suslov went back to Moscow in March of 1946. So let me turn now to the second generation of leaders. On the left, Yankel Gutkovich, director of the Jewish Museum, a native of Vilna, poor, orphaned, a real worker, yes, active in the labor movement. Most important for us, a veteran of World War II with many medals, orders, for fighting in the Red Army during World War II, and a member of the Communist Party, important for many reasons. Next to him in the middle, the veteran Yiddish journalist, Shloime Baylis. Baylis was actually the founder of the group Jung Vilna, into which Suckeverio and Kaczerginski belonged. So he was a bit older than them and well known as a journalist. And next to them, Alexander Rinzyunsky. Also, all three are natives of Vilna. Rinzyunsky was a bookkeeper by profession, but he was in the Vilna ghetto, and he was a member of the FPO, later in the forests. Also, as you can see, the second generation are people committed to staying. After all, they're from Vilna. They could have left for Poland, but meaning usually they are communists. They're honest communists, if you can imagine that, but there was such a thing. They're believers in this ideal. But they're also very committed to Jewish culture and to this Jewish museum. At the peak, this museum had a staff of 10 people. You know, if you include everybody, the janitor and the secretary and etc. I'm not going to spend much time on administration and things like that. I will mention one thing about the building. You all know the courtyard. I don't have pictures from then of the other side of the courtyard, the building that was the ghetto library. But the museum had four houses. So it's both the buildings that are now on what was called Strashun Street. What is it called? Žemaitija. And these houses which stand on Lida Street, yes. I can't go into a lot about the history of the space. Of course, you can see that the open space was the ghetto sports field. Behind the railing was the ghetto prison. But the headquarters of the museum were actually these buildings in the back. What I wanted to point out, which is not well known, is the building was repaired. It was in terrible condition, all the buildings. And as you can imagine, after the war, you couldn't even get glass, and let alone to get, cement and bricks. It was very hard to repair a building in 1945 or 1946. The work was done by a brigade of German prisoners of war. 20 to 30 Germans, prisoners of war. There was no greater irony than to have Germans taking orders from a Jewish director about how to fix a building and being afraid, because obviously these people are connected with the Soviet government and they can be shot for not following orders. So the building got repaired. I now want to talk about it as what this museum did. Yes, here you can see more pictures of the sports field walls. On the right here is Tzivia Wildstein, who was the first director of the Jewish school. Short-lived director of the Jewish school. I can't go into her story. First, I will mention something institutional. The museum had support. An institution like this cannot exist without political support. An important source of political support was from Moscow, was from the Jewish Anti-Fascist Committee in Moscow, which was chaired by Solomon Shlomo Michoels, great Yiddish actor, Gosset, and he was the chairman. Michoels visited the museum in 1945. He fell in love with the museum and with the city, and he is important because he writes to Soviet institutions. You should help this museum. This is important. From Moscow. There is support for this museum in Moscow. He helps even the museum in many direct ways. He sent books here. Hundreds of books were sent from Moscow to this museum. This museum is not a local phenomenon. It is, as I said, the only Jewish museum in the Soviet Union, and the people who support Jewish culture in Moscow or in Kiev all love it and admire it and support it. As I mentioned, it has opposition. Early on, it had Suslov, when he is here in Vilnius, really prevents anything. Lots of problems for the museum and for the school. He thinks these things should not exist. He says straight on, you want a Jewish museum? Have it in Birobidzhan. You want a Jewish school? You can have it in Birobidzhan. Okay. I mentioned this museum sponsors public programs. I can't list all of them. It's not interesting to list all of them. I'll simply mention, you get the Yiddish writers from Moscow coming here. They love this city. They love the atmosphere. They love the memories it brings back. So this is Peretz Markish, very important Soviet Yiddish poet who had lived in Moscow, coming to Vilnius in 1945. And here you see different, the group of Yiddish writers, but also some staff members. Nomi Markelis in the far right hand. She was the secretary of the Jewish Museum at that time. I'm showing you this mainly to demonstrate you have public events, programs by Yiddish writers in honor of a new book or in honor of a visitor. Now I want to mention the museum became a museum. Gutkovich made the Jewish Museum for the first time into a museum. A museum makes exhibits. Yes, that's the core of what a museum is. Suckeverio, Kaczerginski, Kovner did nothing about exhibits. Gutkovich did that. And I'm only showing you this, first of all, to show another staff member, Rezel Stolitsky. But also you can see a little fragment. There was an exhibit in 1946 on Sholem Aleichem, on the 30th anniversary of Sholem Aleichem's death. And you can see the letters. You can even see 1916, and May 13th, 1916 to May 13th, 1946. There were various events in Vilnius in that occasion, but the big event was the exhibit at the museum, which showed original letters by Sholem Aleichem. I can't go into details about this exhibit, but it was described. A lot of what I know about the museum is described in articles in the Moscow Yiddish newspaper, Einigkeit. The Yiddish writer here, Shoshorovich, was the Vilnius correspondent of Einigkeit. So he wrote an article about the Sholem Aleichem exhibit. There are many others. Now I'm going, as we have the biggest exhibit, and I'm going to talk about it, that the museum made was about the Holocaust, mainly in Lithuania, though also other places. The reason I'm showing you the building again is to stress, you have an exhibit on the Holocaust in the ghetto, in a building, in an address which was central to the life of the ghetto in every way, right? Right after the war, on the site of the ghetto, you have an exhibit on the Holocaust. Actually, the first gallery I just listed here, at least the articles describe the artwork. The first room you walked into was just art and not related directly to the Holocaust. By Antokolsky, by Ilya Ginsburg, usually considered his student, by other Jewish artists. In other words, the first room was truly like an art museum, though there was also art by Lithuanian Jewish artists and Vilnius Jewish artists who perished, who were killed in the Holocaust, some of them connected with Jung Vilna. But the first room is just art. And then you continue on to the exhibit, which was called originally German Mass Murder on Lithuanian Soil and Resistance to the Occupation. That is a very long name, not a great name for an exhibit, in my opinion. And therefore, later, the exhibit was called, simply short, Fascism is Death. What's interesting here, I'm going to show you many photos of the exhibit. I have these photos because Gutkovich left Vilnius for Poland, and then later in life left Poland for the United States. I remember Gutkovich when I was a young teenager. He ran the Yiddish bookstore in New York. Anyway, Gutkovich's daughter lives in New Jersey, and he made these photos of the exhibit, which she had. And when I talked with her, she gave me the photos that he took. And obviously, he considered this very important, that through all his migrations from Vilnius to Warsaw, from Warsaw to New York, he took the photos with him and gave them to his daughter, who shared them with me. Now, the exhibit is clearly about the Jews. This is important because we're talking about the Soviet Union, where it was very common to talk euphemistically about the mass murder of peaceful Soviet citizens, of Soviet people, not to talk particularly about Jews. This exhibit is about the extermination of the Jews, period. It's framed in a Soviet patriotic framework, but it's never obfuscated is a fancy word. It's never covered that what we're talking about is a particularly Jewish story. Yes, you have many text panels in 3 languages, in Yiddish, in Lithuanian, and in Russian, right? And again, you can see about the creation of the ghetto, the different marking signs that Jews had to wear, etc. Now, this is also important because right here in Lithuania, you may know if you're a historian, there were the Čezvičajne Gasudarstvenė Komisija, the special state commissions that studied the crimes of the Nazis and their helpers. The Čezvičajne Gasudarstvenė Komisija worked here in Lithuania and issued a original report, a first report, publicly published it. This is the interim report of the ČGK, and it has a chapter on, sorry for misspelling, I think, Panerai, the mass murder of Soviet people in the town of Panerai. Among the victims, there were scholars and workers, engineers and students, Catholic priests and Russian Orthodox priests. On certain bodies, objects of religious worship from the Catholic and Russian Orthodox churches were found. In other words, the section on Panerai, issued by this Soviet state institution, says nothing about Jews. There were Catholics, there were Russian Orthodox, there were different types of priests. This is a total silencing of the Holocaust. So the Jewish Museum's exhibit has to be seen as a response, as a reaction to these first Soviet efforts to not talk about the Jews. And as really as part of a, if you like, a polemic or a dialogue with the ČGK. Yes, the exhibit, first of all, had objects that were easy to obtain in 1946. They simply went to Ponard and collected objects like this, right? A skull with a bullet hole in the back. And others. Shoes. This is all collected right, just a few miles away. I think also the exhibit it didn't have any restraints. It didn't have any self-censorship in this emotional sense. In America today, I will not talk about, I think also in Vilnius, we would not show this. This is in some ways so upsetting, shocking, and even offending. And it's offensive to the person who was shot to show their skull. Like in American Holocaust museums, this would be going too far. We have certain emotional restraints. I won't go into details. There are other examples. This museum, right after the war, has no restraints. It wants to shock, and it's very hard to shock your audience because everybody went through the war, and the war was horrible for everybody. So you have to you get quite extreme in what you show. Yes, so but you show, again, no Holocaust museum in America would show soap, which is allegedly made from the fat of Jewish bodies. I'm just pointing out different aspects of this exhibit. It did use art. Some of the art was actually made in the ghetto. Much of the art is made right after the war by surviving artists like Rafael Chvolis, very prominent artist right after the war, did many of these paintings. This is on the liquidation, as you know. The remaining inmates were sent down Subachas. Now, there were some things that can't be talked about because also Soviet rules said they can't be talked about. This is one of them. One topic that was taboo was mentioning anything about Lithuanian collaboration, about any participation of Lithuanians in shootings or murder, because, the Soviet principle was Druzhba Narodov, brotherhood of all Soviet peoples. All Soviet people suffered equally under the Nazi occupation, and you can't talk about local collaborators. This is also true elsewhere. If you read the Black Book, the great compendium on the Holocaust prepared by Ilya Ehrenburg and Vasily Grossman, there is nothing about collaboration by Ukrainians. You can talk about Romanians, but not about Ukrainians, not about Russians or Lithuanians. So here, when it's talking about roundups in 1941, it says, Germans in uniform and degenerates Padonki in Russian, in civilian clothing. In other words, who these degenerates are is left unspoken. There is a lot in this exhibit about celebrating the heroes of the FPO, portraits of Itzik Wittenberg and Sonja Madejsker. Of course, the only heroes that are celebrated are people who were communists. Abba Kovner is not mentioned anywhere in this exhibit, and all the other leaders of the FPO who are from other political movements are not mentioned. In fact, this text on Itzik Wittenberg, I know it's small, I could make it bigger, but it says that the FPO was organized by the Communist Party. This is totally false, totally a lie. This is not true, but it has tried to make it as if the FPO were communist-run and communist-organized. Yet again, Chaim Yelin of Kovner, of Kaunas, also a bust of him with an inscription. But of course, Yelin was a communist. Anyone non-communist is not mentioned. What's interesting is this exhibit displayed things that were in the museum buildings itself. You see, as I mentioned before, one part of the museum territory was the former ghetto prison. And different people in the ghetto were imprisoned by the ghetto police for different reasons, small and large. Many of those people who were in the ghetto prison were sent from there to Ponar to be murdered. So the museum photographed this graffiti, these inscriptions on the wall, from its own offices. The prison cells were used as offices by the staff. So they photographed the walls from their own offices to show in their exhibit, which is just, 30, 40 meters away from where the inscriptions were found, right? I'm sorry, this got inversed in the Yiddish, but yes. For Ponar werden wir nehmen Nekome. For Ponar we will take revenge. And on the wall, graffiti, Kein mal sag nit, as du gehst dem letzten Weg, the famous line from the Partisans' Hymn by Hirschglick, written as kind of parting a graffiti by an inmate. Now, the exhibit did have something on the Holocaust outside Lithuania, but not a lot. Interesting, there are no text panels, just pictures with short captions. In other words, no narrative, no explanation. I should stress, the narrative of this exhibit starts in June 1941 with Nazi atrocities in Lithuania. It does not start in September 1939 with Nazi atrocities in Poland. That is foreign territory, and it is not discussed. It would be very complicated to discuss 1939 to 1941 for many reasons. And so that the focus is on Lithuania, but there is some, pictures shown of other places, especially on other parts of the Soviet Union. I'll get back to that. Now, I should say, the museum got donations of all kinds of material. And a lot of survivors visited from other places. This is not a local thing. People come from Ukraine, survivors of the war, to look at this Jewish museum. No one did this, have an exhibit on the Holocaust. And they donate things, right? So that's how they get these objects from Treblinka. Vasily Grossman in Moscow gave objects which he collected in Treblinka. He was there with the Red Army when it liberated Treblinka. And inmates provide things, like obviously Stutthof is probably a Lithuanian Jew. And Ilya Ehrenburg, who's the most prominent writer of Jewish origin in the Russian language at this time, very famous journalist and writer. Ehrenburg, who prepared the Black Book, donated, well, actually on loan, but he provided to the museum many photographs that he had collected of massacres of Jews and atrocities against Jews across the Soviet Union. I have to tell you this story. It's an interesting story. Ehrenburg, the museum, Gutkovich wanted him to donate this material. He said, I won't donate it to you, but I'll lend it to you. And if, for any reason, I want it back, you'll give it back. They said, why? They said, I don't really believe a Jewish museum will last very long. And it may be someday, you're probably going to be closed down. And, Gutkovich and the others are shocked. This is 1946, 1947. What are you talking about? But he knew better. The Black Book had been banned, his book that he prepared. And so they arranged the documents. And in fact, when the Jewish Museum was closed, the documents were sent back. Just before closure, they sent it back to Ehrenburg. Yes, this is a Soviet patriotic museum. It couldn't be any other way. I mean, it's on the state budget, and it is under, the Ministry of Education and Culture, and it is a Soviet, it tries to bring together a patriotic Soviet perspective with a Jewish story. Sometimes it has to be dishonest, but it is much more honest than the silencing that was taking place everywhere in the Soviet Union. It ends, yes, with one of the ending sections is about the Nuremberg Trials and the punishment of Nazi war criminals. And finally, I'll mention two other things that this museum did related to the Holocaust. One is the museum played a role in the erection of a Jewish monument at Ponar. The museum tried hard. It already in 1946 sent memos. The best friend in the Soviet-Lithuanian leadership of the museum was Justas Paleckis. Not the others, not Sniečkus, let alone all the other people. But Paleckis had Jewish friends from before the war. He had sat in prison with Jewish communists. Paleckis knew some Yiddish, from sitting in prison with Jews. Suckeverio says this. They tried to appeal through Paleckis to have a monument established at Ponar in 1946. Nothing happened, but the idea was picked up by the religious congregation, the synagogue, which appealed and said, Ponar is a Jewish cemetery. It needs a monument because it's a cemetery. And it's interesting that the religious community succeeded where the museum failed. And therefore, this monument, the Yiddish Hebrew inscription, this is a Jewish monument. There is no hammer and sickle. There is no Soviet insignia. You wouldn't know that this is in the Soviet Union. It's a very unusual kind of monument. And it even quotes a verse from the Bible, a part of the Hebrew liturgy. This was erected in the summer of 1948. Again, I will give some credit to the museum, even for starting the process of asking to have a monument at Ponar. As you probably know, or maybe you should know, this monument stood from 1948 till 1952, when it was demolished and replaced by the Soviet monument, which said nothing about Jews. Finally, I'll mention the museum was very active in the trial of Franz Müller. Müller was probably one of the 2 or 3 Germans most responsible for the mass murder of the Jews of Vilna. He was found in Germany, actually by the British. He was sent by the British back here and put on trial. Very interesting trial in the fall of 1948. The problem was the Lithuanian prosecutors knew nothing about the Holocaust and about the ghetto, and they were blind. They didn't know how to prosecute the case. And where they went was to the Jewish Museum, which had a lot of documents and which also the survivors sort of congregated around the museum. Aleksander Indziunsky was both on the staff of the museum and a survivor of the ghetto himself. So he knew the material, he knew the history, and he literally prepared a chronology for the prosecutors to explain to them what happened in the ghetto. And he provided the documents, and he also collected other witnesses. The deposition, the sworn testimony of witnesses before the trial took place at the Jewish Museum. About 10 different survivors gave testimony before the trial, some of them at the trial, right? He was what they called общественный обвинитель, community or social accuser at the trial. So this museum, of course, it will be closed down in July 1949. That's nothing surprising. All Jewish cultural institutions in the Soviet Union were closed in late 1948 and 1949 in Moscow and Kyiv. They were not religious, but cultural. Einekite is closed, the Yiddish Theater is closed, the publishing houses are closed. It would have been impossible for everything to be closed and the Jewish Museum in Vilnius to stay open. This is a general Soviet policy to liquidate Jewish cultural institutions. So in fact, the Vilna Museum, the staff expected it to be closed. They saw everything, all the writers disappearing. Some of the Yiddish writers in Vilnius were not arrested. None of these people were arrested. Gutkovich, Indziunsky, Baylis were not arrested. That is, in the history of this time, unusual. Right, the Yiddish writer Hirsho Shirovich, the Vilnius correspondent for Einekite, was arrested. So the museum was short-lived, only 5 years, but it did things in a relatively small community. It did things that nobody else in the Soviet Union tried to do or could do, and I think it deserves to be remembered and celebrated as, in its context, a great cultural achievement. Thank you.